I see the camera is running, and it's just what it is.
Perfect.
And let me see if you have to look at me or in the camera. I think more like this. This is okay. Maybe please introduce yourself first. So.
Sure. I'm Rishad Tobaccowala. I am today an author, a speaker, and an advisor. And prior to this, I used to be the Chief Strategist and Growth Officer of the Publicist Group.
Thank you very much. I listened very well to your presentation this morning. Thank you for doing that. I was thinking, what do you think, regarding to the subject of this morning, is the biggest challenge for agencies in this new era?
So I believe the biggest challenge for agencies in this new era, which also happens to be the biggest opportunity, is how do you help clients remain relevant in the future? And by doing so, how do you as an agency remain relevant in the future? And in order to do that, you need to basically continue to have the ability to attract a disproportionate share of talent and run a great culture. You need to basically think about the future trends, which are about globalization, demographic shifts in technology. And you need to continuously rethink your business so you are aligned with the future, because the future doesn't necessarily fit in the containers of the past.
Thank you very much. Now I have the same question, but from the other side. What do you think is the biggest challenge for clients in this new era?
The biggest challenge for clients in this new era is how do they, in today's world, get to connect with people in ways that stimulate a human connection, emotion, and engender trust. Because it's harder and harder to find people cost effectively. It's harder and harder to move them in ways that help build a brand, which usually is built around emotion and trust. And the three challenges, why those are even more challenging today, is one is because the media landscape is much more fragmented, so it's harder to find people. Second is a lot of people, because of the broad polarization and breakdown in trust, sometimes are suspicious. But third, many of these brands also now are being asked to do so many different things at the same time that it's really hard as a brand or as a leader. So for instance, Disney, as an example, is now unfortunately torn between what their employees want Disney to do and what the state of Florida wants Disney to do. So the employees want Disney to stand up for LGBTQ rights. The state of Florida says you have become a woke corporation and we're taking away your tax privileges. And what do you do? So those are some of the challenges. And in all of those, which is what do you do? How do you connect with people in this new world? How do you engender trust and build emotion? Is why I think agencies and service providers are essential.
That's great. I'm changing the point of view now.
Sure.
And a few other questions, because this is better. Yeah, definitely. Okay. You were talking this morning about the 4 connections. I was wondering, what do you think is connection number 5?
So the 4 connections we were talking about was globalization, technological change, demographic shifts, and the impact of COVID-19, and how successful companies need to understand. For them to succeed, they need to be connected to these 4 trends, or the impact of the trends. I think the 5th one is something that I truly believe in, but I don't have the data to necessarily support it, which is the world always gets better. And one has to think positively and optimistically. My belief is, if you read the newspapers and watch the headlines, and isn't that there aren't problems from COVID-19 to climate change to everything else, but if you look at what it is to be alive today, from all of humanity, not any particular individual, and you look at it versus 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and 30 years ago, for most people, they would rather be alive today than 30 years ago. Not that we don't have difficulties and problems, but I remind people, let's suppose you are a person who is of color, a person who is a woman, a person who is gay, a person who has grown up in India or in China, right? A person who is suffering from cancer. You'd rather be living today than 15, 20 years ago. And the world gets better for most people, but because it does through both market and other dynamic forces, there's always a group of people for which it gets worse. And news focuses on what's bad news. Again, I'm not saying there isn't bad stuff, including potentially a recession, but the world keeps getting better, and I try to remind people in the marketing and advertising business, if that wasn't true, then there wouldn't be any brands, because brands, for many ways, are not a rational decision. Brands are basically emotional, because if that wasn't true, nobody would buy a watch, because a phone has a better watch than a watch, and most people would basically buy a Swatch or right? And people wouldn't lust after an Omega or a Rolex or whatever. So that's what I remind people. And also, by the way, obviously some people don't have children because they don't want to or because they're pessimistic about the future. But I remind people that at least our parents were optimistic because we were born. So optimism has some benefits. That would be the fifth connection.
Thank you. I have two more questions. This one is, how do you think agencies can reach and connect with talent? Because the war on talent, everybody's talking about it, but how can we reach and connect with the talent we need?
I think agencies can reach talent by basically asking and try to make sure that they have an environment and opportunities that give talent what they ideally want, and then explain to them that we understand what they want and that we will give it to them, sometimes not all at the same time, but they will get them. So talent basically wants, initially they want money, fame and power. You got to pay talent, they'd like to become famous or their work become famous, and they want a sense of autonomy or control. But the reason talent stays in an organization is for purpose, values and connections. And so companies have to have cultures that value people, have purpose that people are aligned with, right? And where people can speak freely and they feel connected to other people. And finally, the last three, which have come primarily post-COVID, is they want the opportunity to grow their skills. They want a certain degree of freedom on how they work. And so, for instance, they will work sometimes from one place and sometimes from the office, but if you force them all into the office and it's not a dentist business, they'll ask why. And finally, they want to see, we are in the business of storytelling, and we tell ourselves stories in order to live. That's what the author Joan Didion said. So how does our company and our agency fit in the story of their lives? So to attract talent, start with money, fame and power, run a culture with purpose, values and connections. And please rethink yourself in a world where people are looking for growth, freedom, and story.
I'm impressed by the wise words you said today, but is there something that we missed today that you want to say to the audience? Now you have the chance.
So here's what I would say to the audience. For people who are in the advertising and marketing business, I basically believe the business is about to have its best decade or two coming forward. And the best is in the future versus the past. And the reason for that is because marketing at its heart is about understanding and meeting customer requirements, which is understanding and meeting people's requirements. And technology has made people much more powerful than ever before. It's given us godlike power with what we can do with our phones, search engines, etc. So we are now marketing to the gods. If marketing is about understanding the power of and satisfying the future gods, it's going to be very, very important, and it's going to be the way that we differentiate in our business, because our business is a combination of math and spreadsheet and storytelling and meaning. And very few businesses are like this, which is marketers are going to have to market because their customers have become smarter, therefore marketing is going to become more important. And the way we're eventually going to reach these people is some combination of fact plus storytelling. I'm not saying lies and fantasy, but storytelling. Because that's how brands are built, through a combination of storytelling, provenance, identity, all of these things. So I think we're very, very bullish. And as an industry, we should think about that this is a growth industry, define it broadly as marketing, and never forget that it's not just about the spreadsheet, but also about the story.
These are great words. Thank you very much for
Well,
extra time.
Thank you.
So Rishad,